You'll be my forever friend. This love will never end. No, nothing can come between us. No, never with you.
One of the key differences between dating potential and measuring capacity in relationship, I'll say 2 points. One is don't date potential, but do measure the capacity in the relationship, and start measuring the capacity by first looking at yourself. Measuring your capacity, because sometimes we desire certain things and sometimes we want to thrust ourselves into certain relationships or certain dynamics, but we haven't really built up the muscle. It's as simple as someone who's going into the gym who either wants to lose weight or wants to build muscle. You're not gonna go in there and just start benching like 100 pounds, day one, if you've never gone in there, right? So you don't have the capacity yet. So you got to build the muscle. You might start with like 10 or 20, depending on where you are, if you're a man or a woman. But you know that if you want it to be lasting, right, that you have to deal with where you are in real time, and that you want to build up to that point, right? So that's measuring capacity. Whereas, dating potential, the key is that there is some kind of narrative that you have erected in your mind, either about a relationship that you're in. That narrative can be good. It can be based on a hope or an outcome or desirable outcome that you wish to experience. And if that narrative gets erected and now displaces the truth, then we are now riding off of the potential of the relationship. And that is going to, unfortunately, inevitably disappoint you. Because when that narrative is erected and now the truth can't penetrate that narrative, right, or course correct it or reappropriate what you thought it was, then there's no way to, if it is a person that you are supposed to grow with, there's no way to identify where you are in reality in the moment right now, identify what shifts, what adjustments need to be made, and then transform from there, right? It's just the imagination. And we know that we can't build a foundation of a relationship based on a false narrative or an imagination. Even if that imagination that you have or the narrative that you've built is based on good intentions or good life, good aspects of life that you want to experience, right? Whereas measuring capacity is, what? Let this person show me all of their cards. Let me not jump the gun. Let me not get in the way. Let it play out so I can see how this person is and measure their capacity on how they deal with me, on how they deal in other environments with their friends, with their family, with their coworkers, with strangers even, right? Is this a person who has moral fiber, moral ethics, that where they're kind and not just being nice, where they are more centered in the truth and doing what's right, no matter where, right, what context they're placed in or what environment or spaces that they're placed in. And as the first video that I showed said, sometimes when you, like me and my husband, you'll meet people where they're not at their full capacity yet, right? But you can see what they do with their shot glass of capacity. You can see how consistent they are with the words that they say, how consistent they are with how they treat their friends and family. You can see all of those things, how consistent they are or with how they deal with mistakes that they've made, how they bounce back from it, or do they do a down spiral, into insecurity or other things. You can see, their work ethic when they take on certain responsibilities or activities, and you can gauge it from where they are. Because if a person is consistent with that shot glass of capacity, it will start to overflow, and you will see that their container will get bigger and bigger in life, and God will give them more things to be steward over. He will give them more responsibility because they have shown that they are able and equipped and useful and fit, right? We said in the last podcast that was one of the meanings of kind is that that person is fit and useful, right? As well as they are of a certain characteristics, of an essence, of a nature. So you can get to see who that person is, and it's important because what you're really saying is that I am going to let the truth reign supreme in this relationship. And I'm not going to be afraid of seeing the truth and experiencing the truth because the truth always has my best interest. It is always in favor of my best interest. Whereas the narratives that I create for myself, even though I might have good intentions, they might not be the very best thing for me. Just like in the example I gave with the boyfriend, the dating that I, was into before I met or started my forever friendship with my husband. It was like, yeah, it was just a narrative that I created. And the interesting part, and I think one of the important part that you want to remember is that it's not like the narrative isn't coming from, some right aspects to it, right? Or truthful aspects to it. Like in my situation, right? Yeah, my father did pass away. There was a void there for me. So yeah, it is a good thing that I'm with this family and I get to experience, how I would think it would be if it was, possible for my mother and father to be together. So it's not coming from, kind of a flimsy place. And it has good intentions to it, but that still doesn't negate the fact that that narrative can still distort whether you're really supposed to be right in this relationship, because that truthfulness in that narrative is one thing. Like I can still sit down and have dinner with this family without being in a relationship with him. Like, don't get me wrong, it was the relationship that gave the pathway for me to experience that. But I can say to myself, like, well, maybe this relationship was just for this, to provide some wholesomeness for me in this way. But I'm making it more than what it really is supposed to be. And if I allow it to do what it's supposed to be, then it'll propel me, right, to where I need to be and navigate me to maybe the person who is for me, which it did, right? It literally navigated me towards my husband. So those are some of the things that I think are important takeaways. And when you hear somebody say, which I'm sure you hear somewhere down the line, don't date potential. Now I'm hoping that from this live, you'll really understand like what that truly means and what the process really looks like. Because it's hard to articulate, it's hard to identify our emotional processes oftentimes. And so I'm grateful that I can be in a space and provide an opportunity that can provide a space to articulate, or provide maybe metaphors or, examples that can kind of bring some clarity to how that process actually comes about. So if you take anything away from tonight, I would love for you to take those things, and assess your relationships where you are right now, and assess what's fueling them, whether you look at certain relationships that you're in and whether you feel like, oh, wow, this relationship, yeah, I do see that there is some kind of narrative that I have created about this, and I need to let me kind of see if it's aligning with what's really going on in real time. And don't be afraid to look at it. And when you look at it, then you can kind of see, if the narrative that you have and if it's a hopeful one, and, if in real time there are things and there's evidence and fruits that are showing that it is going in that direction, because that's kind of the way that it works, then great, then, there's no harm in if your narrative that you have is actually based on the truth and it's aligning with the truth. That can happen too, that's a great experience. But if you find that it's not, then it's like, okay, we've got to, you know how they were taking down all those monuments during 2020, right? We got to do that. Like, get a rope, tear it down, tear the narrative down. And when you're doing that in the emotional process of how that's done is that you ground yourself in the truth. So, so that it's not hurtful to you because the truth is bringing clarity. So that's how you kind of, reappropriate it and kind of cast the imagination down and erect the truth so that the truth can guide you and guide your actions. So, but thank you guys. I appreciate it. As always, I always say you can be anywhere, like anywhere. Well, you are anywhere in the world. However, I'm just saying that you can spend your time, your faith, your time, your energy they are the most priceless resources here that we can have. So the fact that you took time to pop in for a minute, a second, maybe even if you stayed through the whole podcast, I appreciate you. I really do. And I thank you for your time and your energy. And I hope that whatever I presented to you, that there was something that resonated with you, something that you can carry and help equip you with the way that you navigate your relationships and cultivate your life. If you like anything that you heard, definitely come back again.